Okay, here we go. All right. Yep. All right. So whenever you're ready, we can.
Oh, Oscar.
Oh no. Oh, let me know when I'm okay to go, Scott.
You can go ahead whenever you're ready. You
Okay.
can go.
All right. Welcome to the Reliable Recall Workshop. You're probably wondering why your dog comes to you inside the house but struggles outside. And so that's what today's all about. Ideally, when the way I approach recall is by the end of this workshop, I would like you to be able to understand that your emotions, your dog's emotions, distractions, all that affects your dog being able to come when called. And I don't know how many times I've heard like my dog knows how to come when called, but he just doesn't do it. And so we're going to talk about some of those things and scenarios in which your dog's not coming when called, and why that's happening. Because I'm a firm believer in, if you're able to understand the why behind the behavior, it makes it a lot easier to navigate and get them, back on track. So before we start that, let's do a quick check-in. We can go to the next slide. All right. So if you want to put in a chat, because it's very helpful, your dog's name, age, and where are you joining from? Let me pull up my chat here. All right. So if you can type that, give you a second to type that in the chat if you're able to. If not, no worries. Okay. All right. So essentially, when we talk about age and location, just to throw an additional tip out there, the reason why I ask about age is because depending on your dog's age, trying to get them to come back to you can start to become a little bit challenging. So if you have a teenager dog between the ages of like 1 year to 3 years old, you may find some of the things you're asking your dog to do challenging. Same thing with a puppy. It may be challenging just because they're young and they just don't know. When it comes to location, believe it or not, this is one thing, one of the things that you may not know as a dog owner, is that location and weather is definitely going to affect your dog's recall. So if you talk about, I'm over here in New England, but sometimes it's rainy, sometimes it's hot. All that affects your dog's listening. And if you think about it, we're no good either on a really hot day for us, like focus and stuff. If we are too hot and we can't concentrate, your dog is no different either. So Coco is 10 years old, Shiba, and we have Fanny, a 7-year-old Jindu mix located in Anaheim, California. Okay. And then we have Sherry with Riley in Canada, both females. Okay. So put in the chat, you're from Sherry is from Canada and Marie is from California. What is the weather like now? What is it like today? Or what's generally the weather where you're located? I'll give you a second to do that. And while you do that, we'll move on to the next slide. And then once you put it in there, I can take a peek. Okay. And Diane has a 6-month-old. So you're at the beginning of the teenage stage, Diane. Okay. All right. So we can move on to the next slide. Okay. So now that we talked just a little bit about recall, everyone should have received a workbook in their email. If not, no worries. You can just write it down on a piece of paper, or if you have good memory, you can remember it. Looking at this scale here, at this current time, how is your dog's recall? Is it great when you call them? Is it pretty good most of the time? Sometimes a hit or miss. Inside only they come to you, or is it like my dog? What is recall? I don't know what that is. So type the number in the chat that best describe where your dog is right now at recall. And this also gives me good insight when we start to, move forward in the workshop, how to tailor it to your dog's age and where you are with recall. So 7 and 3 years old, okay. Sunshine, 6 months, West Columbia, South Carolina, okay. And if you guys want to throw numbers 1 through 5 in the chat to let me know where your dog is with coming when called. Okay, Marcella said a 3, sometimes a hit or miss. That is honestly, that's like one of the top answers, 3 and 4 about the average. As long as exactly, and that's why you're here today to talk about the distractions. Because yes, your dog can come and call, but add distractions to the mix, and it's right out the window. But yes, 3s, a lot of 3s. Like I said, 3 and 4s are the most common answer, and you are not. Yep, Coco. Let's see, did I miss something? Coco 3, Fanny 4. Okay. Wait, Anna said 0. Hey, thank you for your honesty, Anna. And it's like that, 0. You'll get an array of 1 through 5s, and maybe inside it's a 1, but outside is a 5, right? But we'll talk about that. All right. So thank everyone for that. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Let's talk about why it breaks down. So I stress this with the families I work with. Even if it's not recall problems look different for every dog in every family. And recall is like up there, like up there with the top 3 struggles, alongside jumping and pulling on a leash. So just know that what you're experiencing is very normal. But you say your dog doesn't come when called. As a trainer, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper than that, right? Because when we talk about our dog not coming to us, we want to pinpoint where that's happening, when that's happening, and around what. So I'll give you a few minutes, and I just want you to think about when is it happening? So all the different places it's happening. Around what does it happen? Is it kids? Is it other dogs? Is it people they're not listening? And where is it happening? Is it inside the house, at a family member's house? So you want to start making a list of all those things. So you're not just identifying like, oh, my dog's not coming called. When is it happening? Let me grab where is my water? Give me a second. Go back here. And if you guys want to drop that in the chat too, if anyone wants to speak to that, where, when, and around what I tell folks is I guarantee you, you're not alone, and you'll see some of the same scenarios where other dog owners are struggling. All right, I'll give you guys a second. You guys must be really writing, which is okay. So I have you write this down. I promise you it's all going to come together at the end, so you can utilize this worksheet and what we're talking about, so you can start to understand how to get your dog to come reliably. Outside with the dogs or squirrels, etc. Definitely heavy on that, etc. Outside with the squirrels, this time of year, I get tons of calls coming in. Bunnies, squirrels, they just populate overnight all of a sudden, right? What I tell families is that we're asking our dog to come and call when there's a squirrel or a bunny, not saying that they cannot do that, but having them come back from chasing a squirrel is like asking them to do like college level work when your dog's only at maybe elementary level. So it takes time to build up to that. So I always say, if your dog's chasing squirrels right now and they don't have their master's degree, then don't feel bad about it. We just have to make sure that we're putting precautions in place, but we'll talk more about that. All right. And it happens with Maisie outside of other dogs are around or people. Exactly. Dogs who are excited to meet people, other dogs, and especially dogs. Always, this is another thing. Dogs that go to daycare, they tend to want to run after other dogs too, just because at daycare they're used to running up to other dogs and saying hi. So when you have them, outside and you're trying to keep them near and not running away, they tend to, go off other places. But yes, all those scenarios are pretty common. All right, so let's move on and let's figure out. Um, ooh, recall isn't one skill. So that goes right back to when I asked you, where does it happen? When does it happen? And writing down all those scenarios. Because if you were to call me, you'd probably say, oh, my dog doesn't listen. And like I said, I'll challenge you even further. What are those scenarios? Um, so the scenarios in which your dog most likely does listen, if you look, it may be easy here. Coming inside, that inside the house, if you call them from room to room, the backyard, the front yard, those are easier situations. The tougher situations, higher distractions that are less predictable, around other dogs, like Marcella said, around wildfire, if you know if you're in that type of area, and at the park. So looking at this slide here, which would you say is the hardest situation for you? I know some of you mentioned some of them. Are there anything else that comes to mind when you look at this slide that may be tough or easy? Okay. All right. And while you guys think about that, like I said, you can always just pop it in the chat. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay. Inside, outside. Okay. Around other dogs. That's what Marie said. Absolutely. That's a common one where they're just like, I don't care what you're saying. All right. So let's talk about inside versus outside. The same cue has different results. You're probably saying, I do ask my dog to come, I do give them a treat, but they're not coming. So inside is usually easier because things are not as interesting. They know the people in their house, the smells, the routine. So it's just easier for your dog to succeed because they know what's expected, right? So say your dogs come in when called inside the house 80% of the time. Where I find most families struggle, as soon as you walk out the door, it's like all the listening goes out the window and everything's harder. So you have to think about it this way. When you're going outside and you ask your dog to come to you, you're competing against the environment. And a lot of times we don't have the proper treats or tools to compete with the environment. So that's why a lot of the time your dog's not coming when called, because the people are unpredictable, dogs, wildlife, smells, all that's going to make it harder for your dog to come to you. All right. So our job, like it says, is to help them succeed while they're outside. All right. So we'll move on to the next slide. Okay. My favorite one. What motivates your dog? So a lot of times what I'll hear is like, are we going to use treats all the time for training, or what else can we use? So I challenge you to think of it this way. You're going to use whatever works for your dogs. I had one dog that just wasn't treat motivated I was working with. And the mom, I was like, well, what does he like to do? And she was like, well, he likes his tennis ball, he likes playing fetch and things like that. And so you want to use whatever it is that motivates them. Some dogs like affection, like praise. Some dogs do like treats, but they maybe like a certain kind. So on a worksheet that you have, you can definitely start listing all the things that your dog loves, because we're going to get to the order of that in a little bit. But that's something that's going to help you, so that recall becomes getting your dog back becomes easier. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide. All right, finding your dog's paycheck. I always say, and people laugh, no one likes to work for free, even your dog, right? And depending on how much we get paid, it depends on how hard we're going to work, right? So you have to think to yourself, I'm asking my dog to come to me. Am I paying him enough? And that's when we go back to the list I just asked you to make. So in dog training world, there's high value treats, which means that is worth working for. Then you have low value treats, right? That means that they work, but the dog could care, whatever about it, right? What I talk to families about is anything that's low value for your dog. You want to use that inside where it's easier for them to come to you, because you don't need something, you don't need to pay them as much to come inside when you're asking them to come to you inside the house. And again, it can be play, it can be different types of treats and things like that. But inside the house, you definitely can use the lower value. When we talk about going outside with distractions, you have to think to yourself, okay, we're going outside. What is it that's going to work best for my dog? And if you're saying, well, nothing's really worked, Pam, I tried everything. You start with what you have. So if you know something works 60% and you need to get something that works better later, you're going to start with whatever you have now. So whatever you have in your house today, you're going to start with that. And that's what you're going to use outside. Why? Because outside, you're competing against distractions. And if you have something that's enticing for your dog, they'll be more than likely to come back to you. I compare it to, I always tell folks, if I asked you to do a job for me, and at the end of it, I was like, I'm going to give you a bunch of saltine crackers and you're going to work 8 hours or 40 hours this week. You're going to be like, yeah, okay, maybe you'll do it, but you're not going to work as hard, or maybe you just won't listen to what I have to say. But if I told you I was going to give you a big juicy steak or 3-day vacation, you probably would go above and beyond. Matter of fact, you might even come back to me and ask me questions and just stick by me because you're so excited about what I'm going to give you. Your dog is no different. And so, like I tell folks, if you have to think about it one way before leaving the house, what is it that my dog's going to respond to most of the time? So let's move on to the next slide and let's talk about treats, right? And so the next thing I'll get after, we're talking about recall is, do I have to use treats forever? What I tell folks is we have to use something to help our dogs understand what we're asking of them. If we don't give them anything back, again, no one's going to work for free. So they just won't do anything, or they won't understand or want to continue to do it. So we use treats, or like I said, if you're not using treats, we use whatever you're going to use to get them to come back to you in the beginning. But then over time, what we're going to do is fade that out. So that you're not using treats or a ball or play and such over time. So I just want to know in the chat right now, what have you tried to use to get your dog to come back to you? Whether it's a certain sound you make, whether it's a certain type of treat, or whether you're just like, I don't know, my dog's not listening at all. So I'll just give you a second to put that in the chat. Good. So if you do have something, again, pop it in the chat. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay. Let's get down to it. The 10-second recall practice. Okay. So when we're talking about practice and recall, or any type of training you're doing with your dog, let's just throw that out there. You don't want to get off this work. You don't want to end this workshop. I'm like, okay, let's go to the park and practice it. Remember back when I was saying everything's easier inside? You want to start inside, whether that's going to be in the house, in your backyard, or in the garage, but it's quieter. So anywhere where it's quieter inside a house or a quiet place, relatively, you're going to start there, because it's going to be easier for your dog to listen to you. And you have to think of it this way: you're almost preparing your dog for the grand finale. So you're going to warm them up in the house. So one of the things that I focus on working with families, a lot of time training doesn't stick, or it falls apart after the trainer leaves, or whatever the situation it may be, it can fall apart for various reasons. I try to make practicing realistic, which means that whatever I have you do, I want you to be able to do it for the rest of your life. And so a lot of times, if you're trained with me, and Marcella can attest to this, I will ask you, what is your schedule from Monday through Friday, because I want to try to insert things into your actual routine so that it makes sense. So one of the things I talk about is your dog's relaxing, doing nothing, and maybe you're walking around, getting stuff together in the house. I'm a big advocate of keeping a little treat bowl up high if your dog can't reach it, or just like in your pockets, and randomly just call your dog to you and just give them a treat when they come to you. And that way you're getting housework done, but you're focused on practicing your dog's recall. Same thing, your dog's in another room. I know a lot of folks are working from home. So say there's multiple folks working from home, or say the dog's in the room with the kids. Same thing. Take a few treats and call your dog to you and just give them, work on it that way. My favorite is your dog sniffing in the backyard. So why is it my favorite? Because a lot of times before we go out into the real world, we want to make sure our dog can focus out in the real world. Like I said, inside your house is easy, but the next step is in your backyard, because yes, you're outside, but you're at your house. There's birds out there, there's smells. So your dog's definitely going to be distracted. If there isn't any distraction, you can toss treats in the grass to have your dog can become distracted. So now that it's going to be nicer out, maybe you're having company over, or maybe you're just hanging in the backyard. When your dog's just sniffing around, practice calling them to you and then giving them a treat. And so these are the different ways. It can be 10 seconds or less that you can incorporate recall into your daily routine. These are just examples, but I always encourage folks, go through your schedule and see what works best for you. Ideally, in training or practicing, dogs only need 5 minutes at a time or less. Any amount of time is better than none. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. Okay. So again, I talked about the different how to practice the recall where you won't have any issues first leading up to outside. So this is a little diagram on a success path. Like I said, again, you're going to start off at home, and you're probably asking, so when do I move outside? When your dog's responding to you, say 70 or 80% of the time, or whatever you're satisfied with, then you can move into the backyard. Same thing, you're going to practice the recall out there. And when they're 70, 80% out there, you're going to move into the front yard and do the same exact thing. Of course, with them on leash, you can use a long line. And then once you do the front yard, you can go to a quiet park, and then a busy park, and then real life. Again, the issue comes in, most people will try to go from the house straight to real life, and that's too big of a jump for your dog because they haven't practiced in any other situations in between. And so in the chat, if you want to write, where have you attempted to practice recall, and is this an aha moment for you? Because a lot of times it is. So I'll have you drop that in the chat. And Marie said they love frozen green beans, and I love them because they're cheap. Exactly. Well, yes. Yes. I had a dog that liked peppers, which is completely fine. Blueberries, apples, carrots. I always say, look in your fridge. And when I'm at consults, I'm like, open your fridge. Let me see. You can use this. So there's a lot of stuff that you probably already eaten on your own that you can definitely use. But yeah, definitely green beans and things like that. So again, if you guys think of things, you could just put it in the chat. But the down for Paws truth, like I said, your dog didn't forget recall. The environment just changed. So if you're outside, you're like, man, my dog's like, I don't know what's going on. Just remember, in this workshop, the environment probably changed, and you want to adapt accordingly. A lot of times I'll say, just like you have a baby bag when you go outside, I have a doggy bag in the back of my car. I always say, get a little Ziploc bag full of not Chex Mix, but things that your dog enjoys. You want a little of the high value treat, low value, something in between. Just like I said, if your dog didn't forget recall, the environment changed. So if your environment changes while you're out and your dog's not listening, you're like, you know what? Let me go ahead and get that salmon treat because my dog's not listening. I remember Miss Pam said the environment changed. Okay. But definitely, once again, you're not going to go to the house, to the Boston Common, for those who are in, know about it. Or that's too big of a jump again. All right. So moving on. Okay. The 4 things to look at every single time. Okay. If you follow me on any of the social media sites, I have the 5 rules of recall, and this is pretty much what it is. If you don't have it, you definitely can grab a free copy. But You're probably thinking, okay, Pam, I tried somewhat of what you're saying, but I don't know, it's still not working. So, what I can tell you is timing is going to be key. You don't want to call your dog if they're already distracted. So, for example, if they're already in the midst of chasing a squirrel, chasing a dog, what are the chances that your dog is going to come to you? They're not. So, you don't want to chase them at that time. You want to wait till they stop running, wait till they stop what they're doing. If they're sniffing along, wait till their head comes up, and then you want to call them to you because they'll be more likely to come to you because they're not busy when they're taking that 20-second break or 5-second break. And so a lot of times I turn it into a game, especially in the backyard. You're going to toss the treats out, let your dog sniff. And the easy way to start practicing with distractions is letting your dog sniff. And the minute they look up, you're going to hold out the treat and call them to you. And the other thing, using the treats in your house all the time, your dog definitely be more likely to come to you. A lot of times we'll start off using treats and then we'll kind of fade it out and the dog's like, it's not worth it. You just want to start using the treats again. Um, Down to rewards. Is the reward good enough to come back from that? It goes back to what I was saying, the change in the environment. If your dog's not coming to you, look at what you're using. Is it good enough to come? If not, start rotating through things and figure out what's going to be good enough for the environment in which you're asking your dog to come to you from. Distance, same thing. A lot of times, I'm guilty too. We'll be like 100 feet away and our dog's playing in an enclosed area and we're calling their name. They're less likely to come when they're further away. So you don't want to keep on calling their name over and over and over because if they're not listening to you the first and second time, they're probably not going to listen. So you call their name once. And then if they're not coming, that's when I start walking towards them. And once you get to a distance where you think they'll come to you, that's when you want to call them back to you. So distance definitely plays a role in it. And again, the last one, environment, we talked about that. What else is going on around you? Are there dogs? Are there wildlife? Sometimes there are smells or sounds that your dog hears or smells, but you don't see. So these things will definitely set you up for success if you start practicing recall and you're like, what's going on here? You just want to work your way through that. Okay, next slide. All right. Again, we talked about timing. The earlier you call your dog, the better it works. I know I just went through how to call your dog, waiting for them to put, their head to come up. Say you're taking your dog for a walk, but you know that when you turn the corner, that's an area where your dog may try to run away or things like that. If we know there's certain locations and certain things that trigger your dog to kind of run away and not listen to you, you want to call them back to you before that happens because you'll be more successful before they get over threshold or before they get to a point where they're not listening. So you always want to try to set your dog up for success. All right, moving on. This one, bad days does not erase progress. So many times I hear, I had a rough time this week and everything's failing. I don't know what's going on. But dogs are no different than we are. There may be times where, say, we're like, we're going to, go on a diet or go to the gym and we go for a month or two, we're doing good, we're losing weight. But then all of a sudden things happen. I always say life happens and it may not even be due to something you're going through. It just, life. So it doesn't mean that your dog is not learning. It just means that they need a refresher. In the Moose story, I was working with this dog last year and it wasn't intended, but there was like a 6-month gap in between. And we was working on recall, the dog not barking and things of such. And mom was so distraught. But what I tell families is that, taking a break in training is not the worst thing because it's, just like real life, stuff like that can happen, which happened in this situation. What's more important is to recognize where your dog is now and realize that they can get back on track. It doesn't matter how long it's been. Just like you'll hear, oh, I knew Spanish, but I don't know it anymore. You do. You may not know it as fluently as before. You just have to, you just need a refresher. So no different there. All right, next slide. All right. I talk about this as well. If you have anxiety over your dog's behavior, your dog definitely feels it. a lot of times when I'm called into consultations or just for training, not only do I spend a lot of time looking at your schedule to see where we can tweak routines and change things around, I want to know how are you doing? Because if just like they say on a plane, you have to save yourself before you save someone else. If you're having a bad day or you're stressed out, your dog definitely feels it and that definitely changes their behavior. And so a lot of times I always ask, check in with yourself for a second. If you're having a bad day or if you're nervous, maybe you don't take your dog to a location where they may not focus as much right now until they can, and you do the recall, in the backyard. But I always say check on your emotions, your nervous system. So we want to try to reduce that, because the more connected you are with your dog and understand your dog, is almost like I always tell folks, if you never trained a bit in your life, your dog follows you around, they just follow what you do. So just being regulated will go a long way. All right, next slide. All right, so your action plan, because this can be a lot of information. So what you want to do this week is you want to choose one place or one situation to focus on first. And if you need some ideas of where to focus on, if your dog is struggling outside anywhere, you want to bring it back to the house and practice inside the house. If your dog is okay in the house, then you want to start in the backyard. You want to practice daily, going back to what I said. It doesn't have to be hours at a time. 5 or 10 minutes is perfect. I know a lot of families that I work with are working from home. Most folks get off at 5. They're going in the backyard to let their dog out to the bathroom. Why not do a few rounds of recall and then go back in? So that's what I mean by incorporating it into your day. Using the rewards your dog loves and making it worth it. One of the struggles I find that families have is, yes, we know the right rewards we need, but then we're like scrambling when we need it. So again, one of the things I do is I keep treats all around my house. I have some in the living room. I have some in my bedroom drawer so that I'm never left without a treat. But it's not the worst if you don't have a treat, you just want to make a big deal out of it. The point being is you want to put them all around the house so you're never left without. Sometimes I just put them in my pocket. And so the last one, you want to track the progress and celebrate the wins, big and small. A lot of times we're looking for the final result, but we're forgetting all the progress our dog is having in between. So you definitely want to tell your dog that they're doing a good job before trying to wait for the end result. All right, next slide. All right, so we're at the end. So this workshop was geared towards getting you to build just a reliable recall inside the home and understanding the factors that affect your dog's recall. I will be holding a total recall workshop because one of the things I focus on is when I come into your home, all dog training starts off in your home where there's not much going on, but the next step is practicing outside the home. So now that we had this online workshop, I want to give you a chance to practice in person so I can help you navigate this and show you what it looks like putting everything together. So the workshop will be held, the location will be to be announced, and it'll be held either in Norwood or Walpole surrounding area. So stay on the lookout for that email. If you are interested in the workshop before getting the email, you can just shoot me a little email and I'll just have your name down as that reminder. All right. Next slide. All right. So thank you for being here, but I do want to open the remainder of the next 10 minutes up for any questions that you have about recall or questions in general. You can either come off mute or you can type it in the chat. So I'll give you guys a second for that if anyone has any questions. Oops, what did I just do? No? Oops. Oops, I'm trying to get my chat back. Okay. All right. So if you guys don't have any questions, what happened here? Okay. So if you guys don't have, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I do provide online training. I can train recall, loose leash walking. COVID definitely put that in place. So if you're interested in online training, you can go to the website and there is a form. It says intro call, but you just want to fill that out and I can send you an email and we can chat about how that would look for you. So definitely I do provide the online training. Any other questions I can answer? No? Okay. So if you think of any additional questions, I'm always around. You can send me an email. If you would like help with recall or any of your dog's training, again, like I said, I do hold online training as well as in person. So if you want to replay, if you want a copy of this workshop, we will be sending that out too. So you can stay on the lookout for that. And thank everyone for joining this evening. And I will see you guys around.